So what is the We Agnostics chapter? Essentially, it's for atheists and agnostics to try to get them to see things from a different angle. Okay, if you're atheist or agnostic, that's up to you. Every atheist or agnostic that I've ever worked with, by the time I was done this chapter, they weren't atheists or agnostics anymore. And that's exactly what the chapter is designed to do. And in my opinion, that's just my opinion, if they hung on to their atheism or agnosticism, to me it would be a form of pride, because there's so much evidence in this chapter to smash the idea. You see, with the alcoholic ego, it is so intensely wants to be defended, and it's part of my identity. It's part of the ego's identity to be an agnostic or atheist. Like it's part of my identity to fucking love hockey and hate baseball. So it's an identity thing. And in this program, we're trying to smash old ideas. Let go completely of other ideas. And if you want to look at it like this, well, the amount of what you actually know is like this much. When you think about the universe as a whole and you think about what you know or what I know, it's like this much. What's more important than this little fucking sliver of what I think I know is what I don't fucking know. And if I can open my mind, then I'm opening my mind to a world of fucking awesomeness. But I live in this little box of who you told me I am and what I think I am. And this chapter is designed to kind of smash that box open. So it's about where and how to find God. Where and how to find God. And don't let, the word God deter you from what God means to you. God to me doesn't mean Jesus Christ. Although if it means that to you, awesome. What God means to me is my grandmother who passed away in 2009. What God means to me is she is the nucleus of my higher power. And around her is a friend of mine who died a couple years into my recovery, who was sober. The universe, my culture, First Nations culture. There's a whole bunch of things that make up what my God is, and I don't really know what it is, but I do know my grandma's in the middle of it, and I talk to her. So where and how to find God, and to prove that he or she or it is there. And then I have this other note. Open-mindedness equals gateway to true knowledge. Like open-mindedness is the gateway to true knowledge. And what are the things that are going to block me from being open-minded? I'm going to flip back to there's a solution. What's going to block me from being open-minded is going to be obstinacy, which is my stubbornness, sensitiveness, which is pride, and unreasoning prejudice. Actually, it's in this chapter. Yeah, there it is, on page 48. We often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Those are the things that are going to block you from growing. Obstinacy, your old ideas of stubbornness and what you think and who you think you are, and sensitiveness, your pride. Someone says something to you, you get hurt, you get offended, and it blocks you, and you fucking put your hand up and say, stay the fuck out of my life, or keep your ideas to yourself. And unreasoning prejudice, which is just basically contempt prior to investigation. I'm going to judge something that I really know nothing about. And those things will block you from true progress in this program. Chapter 4, We Agnostics. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably an alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience can conquer. Okay, so what are we talking about there? We are summing up step 1 in one paragraph. We're basically ending step 1 in that paragraph. And this is a good question to people, but it's not a full compass of being an alcoholic. So they just took 51 pages and kind of put it into a condensed version of 2 paragraphs. If when you honestly want to, you cannot quit entirely. So have you tried to swear off before and you could never quit? And maybe it lasted for a year, maybe it lasted for a month, maybe it lasted for a week. But you honestly wanted, you tried to quit and it didn't work. Or if while drinking you had little control of the amount you took. So when you start using drugs or alcohol, you don't really have control in the amount you take. Then it says you're probably an alcoholic. But if you really want to know, go through the first 51 pages of this step 1 with a sponsor, and then you'll know. And if you are, then you have a solution. And if you're not an alcoholic, you know what? Wish you the best of luck, because you don't need this shit. So if that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness with only a spiritual experience will conquer. So I don't know, I've worked with the hundreds that I'm telling you I've worked with, and I don't see anyone recover without a spiritual experience. That's just me. I have seen the odd person go to like Smart Recovery and get recovery. I have seen the odd person just go to church and get recovery. It's not by mistake that this program was written in 1939, 39. And there's over 312-step programs based on the book, and the literature itself has never changed. Why? Because this shit works really, really well. If you work it, if you follow the directions, not the theory. To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. But to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. So right away in the first page, we get 2 alternatives. One is to die doomed to die an alcoholic death. The other is to accept some spiritual help. Those are my choices here. We heard about those choices all through step 1. Now we're hearing them again. And Bill, because he always does this twice on the same page, almost always, he's going to do it again. But it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were of exactly that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact. What's the facts? The facts are that we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. There it is again. And this is a spiritual basis of life. This isn't a spiritual basis for the first year. Like, I see lots of people come here, do really well in their first year and a half. They're fucking gone. And then they're back here drunk and beaten again. Because they let off on the spiritual program of action. They get happier, they get their job back, they get the wife back, they get all this shit back. But then their spiritual life goes in the toilet because they're victims of that delusion I was talking about. That they can wrest their happiness and satisfaction out of this world. If they have the right job, the right amount of money, blah, blah, blah. You focus on that shit and not fucking God, you're drunk. That's how we roll. But cheer up, something like half of us thought we were atheist or agnostic. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. Here we go. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. So think about that. What type of, a mere code of morals, just wanting to be a better person, or a better philosophy of life. Think about what different philosophies of life or mere codes of morals you've tried to implement in your life before you ever surrendered to this program. Like a lot of us are I'm going to go on the workout regime. I'm going to be workout king. I'm going to eat healthy. Those are philosophies of life. I'm going to read Eckhart's Tolle, The Power of Now, and I'm going to live in the power of now. I'm going to read the Bible. But the point is that people will try to live on that to stay sober. And it doesn't fucking work. And I just want you to think about what types of things you did in your life that didn't work either. This isn't like, and I just want you to think about this, because as we go through literature, some of the stuff just looks like words. And we just go through it. But when you start thinking about this shit, you're like, holy fuck, yeah. I've done every moral and philosophical comforting idea there was. And why it's good to know is because when you start sponsoring, you can fucking do what I'm doing. Tell you how that worked for you. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago and you wouldn't even fucking be here. But we found such codes and philosophies did not save us. No matter how much we tried, we could wish to be moral and we could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all of our might, like we tried to do. But the needed power was not there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, they were not sufficient. They failed utterly. They didn't just fail. They failed utterly. Fuck, I love his words. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live. And it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what the book is about. Its main object will enable you to find a power greater than yourself that will solve your problem. Okay, are you addicted to a substance? If you're here for the substance, then listen up. Lack of power is your dilemma. You need to find a power by which you could live. And think about that word. I don't mean just live. Like, yeah, you can stay alive, which is one thing. But do you want to live? Like live, vital, giving of life, have a good life. And it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are you to find this power? Well, you don't need to fucking figure it out right now. That's exactly what the book is about. Its main object will enable you to find a power greater than yourself that will solve your problem. You're addicted to a substance. This book will take you through the process. You follow the directions and you will do the actions that the program asks for, and you'll get to this power. It'll get to you. You got to do your part. You guys do a two-way fucking street, and this power starts working in your life. You don't have to figure it out in step 2 or step 3. You got to start clearing the channel, though, in step 4. Because the power, I'm going to keep it a secret, but the power is somewhere. And we'll show you where it is in this book. And if you're in the design for living, if you got some sober time in, and you're here for the design for living, which is my specialty, this is what I'm here for, then lack of power. You're powerless over people, places, things, situations, and your defects of character. And it is those things that will take the joy and peace out of your life. So you are powerless. And especially defects of character. So lack of power is also your dilemma. And we had to find a power by which we could live, obviously. But where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what the book is about too. Way more than the substance, if you ask me. Its main object will help me find this power that will solve my problem. Well, what's my problem? Anyone that's been around knows that selfish self-centeredness is the root of our troubles. That is what we will solve. And I don't mean what's my intention, I mean what's the motive in everything that I do. Because I can run my whole life on the best of intention, but if I don't look deeper than the intention and look at the motive, then I won't understand what we're talking about. And I think it's my job to help show people it's not about intention, it's about motive. And when you start giving away your motive to God, and you sacrifice, self-sacrifice, you start growing with God and you start leveling up and living a pretty damn good life. Things really change for the better. That means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we're going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise and we discuss his problems, his alcoholic problems, and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. I know for me, when I was first here, they talked about God, and I thought I got away from that shit. Like, I evaded that, and I tried to get away from it my whole life. And then you fucking bring that in front of my face when I'm here. You know, it was a little disconcerting for me. We know how he feels. We had shared his common doubt and prejudice. Some of us have been so violently anti-religious, to others the word God brought up a particular idea of him, which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered. Hold on. So I'm going to talk about that for a second. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception, or someone had tried to impress this idea upon us during childhood. Well, that's my experience, right? I went to a Catholic school, and it's okay if, you know, you went to Catholic school. I don't care. Fuck, I enjoyed. But I went to the school, and I did mass all the time, and I learned this shit for 12 years in school. But I came out of there going, you know what, I'm not down with that. I believed in something, but I didn't take all the belief systems that I learned in Catholic school to my life. I just went on about my life. And so I was the kid who they impressed their ideas upon me. They didn't really force them. Like, I don't remember them being drilled in my head or anything. It wasn't like I was forced to be an altar boy or anything. I actually remember sitting up in the balcony fucking drinking wine and eating the Eucharist like popcorn, laughing at people. So I wasn't really your best church member, but I am that guy. So we were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. Yeah, that's my experience. I didn't like people that were about God. I thought they were weak. One of my mottos with my kids was, knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you're worth. And I kind of ingrained that into my kids. I'm doing a reverse on it now, but I did ingrain some bad behaviors in them, or some ideas. We looked askance at many individuals who claimed to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with all of that? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet in other moments we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Yes, we have agnostic temperament and have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside whatever prejudices we had and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results. That's what we're talking about, just a little mustard seed of willingness. If you're new and you're not really sure about this God thing, at least say, you know what, I'm willing. I'm willing to explore it. And if you are part of the program and you have no problem with God, then stick around, because today is going to be a pretty rad session for you. Even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God, much to our relief, we discovered we need not consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with Him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed by a new sense of power and direction. Provided. Okay, so I can get this part. Provided what? That I took other simple steps. Why? Because this idea of faith alone is insufficient. To be vital, it must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. It's a program of action. That's what we're talking about. And the steps. We found that God does not make too hard of terms with those who seek Him. To us, the realm of the Spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding. To those who earnestly seek, it is open, we believe, to all men. So I just want to point out there, God will not make too hard of terms with you for those who seek Him. That means I have to do the work. I got to get on my knees. I got to follow the disciplines, and I got to do what I'm supposed to do. To us, the realm of the Spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek Him. And earnestly means honestly. I can say a couple prayers from the brain that mean fuck nothing. But when I get down on my knees and I get in touch with that, whatever that is in your heart or in your body, and you guys all know what I'm talking about, when you get on your knees and you get in touch with that, that is earnestly seeking Him, asking Him. But you don't place demands on Him. You ask and you wait. Why? Because this is a relationship. He doesn't just do for you when you want. And I'll tell you, man, my relationship with God started out as nothing when I got here. And it's just grown to a place today where I can't even explain it to you. I cannot explain my relationship with my God to you because it's unexplainable. But when I got here, I had no fucking idea what we were talking about. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies too to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. This is important. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. So these spiritual terms in this book, you got to ask yourself, well, what do they mean to you? Don't take the judgment idea that you learned your whole life and then condemn these terms and allow them to dissuade you and push you away. Ask yourself, well, what does that actually mean to you? What does God mean to you? right? What does the word spiritual mean to you? I used to think it meant religious, but I don't today. I used to think God meant Jesus Christ. Well, no, I don't today. I used to think all these different things when I got here. But I had to ask myself, well, what do they mean to me? And then they'll grow too. It's about open-mindedness, like we talked about, the gateway to true knowledge. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to affect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which seemed entirely out of reach. That's pretty cool. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things that seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wish to grow, we had to begin somewhere, right? We have to begin somewhere. You can't grow a tree without the tree being a seed first. And then as the tree grows, 100 years later, it's this mammoth trunk, deep roots tree that no storm, no wind, no nothing can take down. You got to start somewhere, right? You got to grow. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. We need to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? So I always ask my sponsees right here, because this is where I give my sponsees step 2. I have in the margin, I have step 2 given here. I ask my sponsees, do you now believe, bro or lady? Or are you even willing to believe that there's a power greater than you? And if they say yeah, then I'm like, right on. Then I will emphatically assure him that he is on his way. Because he doesn't need to have it figured out right here. You just have to have a willingness to believe. So, as soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us upon this simple cornerstone. And if you're taking notes and shit, I want you to circle cornerstone. This word is really important to me. Upon this simple cornerstone. Well, what's the cornerstone? The cornerstone is a willingness. A tiny willingness to believe. That's the cornerstone. A wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. Upon just a belief to believe, like a smidgen to believe, you can build a wonderfully effective spiritual structure in your life on a little bit of a belief. That's what we're talking about, okay? And then this word will come up way later in the chapter, so I want you to circle it. That was great news to us, for we had assumed we could not make much use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we say, I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. But I cannot surely accept the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So when a new person comes in and they're pretty desperate and they really want this program, they look around and they see people rocking this program pretty good. And they can relate on the step 1 sharing part. But they can't relate on the God thing. And the person's so desperate, they look at these other people and they're like, man, I wish I had what that man has. And then they get a little envious. Because they want that, right? There's something about it that they want. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. And then, you get a few months in and then you still see this, but that God idea is just not clicking yet. You can see that these other people have this idea and they got God in their life, but it's still not working for you. So there's a bit of sense of self-pity and it's like, I wish I could believe as he believes. I'm sure it would work if I could believe as he believes. And then once you maybe even do believe, but I cannot accept it, surely the truly many articles of faith which are so plain to him. Well, that was me. I couldn't accept all these things that Buddy had. He's talking about love. He's talking about true tolerance. He's talking about helping somebody he hated. I can't accept all those truly many articles. No way. But we had to start somewhere, right? You get to start somewhere. And you get to grow in this. Because for me, I'm not the same man that came in here. I'll just tell you a little background about myself. I grew up in Calgary. I'm half Cree Indian. And I ended up fighting my whole life. I spent my whole junior high, I fought fucking every day in school. And I was, there wasn't a lot of Native guys in the schools that I went to, or Native kids at all. And kids aren't really that nice. And, I ended up fighting my whole life. And I ended up using fighting as a tool in my life in my teenage years, because it deemed me respect, and people respected me, and they didn't fuck with me. And then, I was angry too, because when I was a little kid, I was abandoned. I didn't even live with my mom till I was like in grade 3, and my dad tried to take care of me, and he was an alcoholic, so he gave me to my grandma on my mom's side. So as a little kid, I was pretty fucking angry, and I took that anger all through my life. And like my hands, you can't see them, but I got scars and I got broken knuckles, and I know my face is still pretty because that's how good a fighter I was, but but no, my hands, and like I fought my whole life, and I was angry and I was violent and I was fucking crazy, man. There's a line in one of my favorite bands is the Dirty Rotten Imbeciles, DRI. And the buddies that I grew up with, they used to say one of these lines out of one of their songs. And here's the line. It was like a wild Indian from outer space, drunk and high on weed. That was my line. I was a crazy fucking Indian, drunk and high on weed, and I would fucking kick your ass. But I sit here today and tell you that God has restored me to sanity in the area of violence and of anger. And, it's not like I'm never, ever angry. But, dude, this program's changed my life. Like, people don't even understand. They're like, dude, can't see you being angry. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's the amazingness of the program. This program will change whatever your biggest issue is in your life. If you work this program, it'll fucking change. But you got to dig in. Anger was the biggest one I had in my life. And it's like primarily non-existent in my life anymore. Because I did heavy, heavy work in the self-sacrifice. I did heavy inventory. I was really willing to change. I didn't want to half measure this program. And, it pays benefits now. Because I don't fight anyone or anything, and I don't fight myself mostly. And if I don't fight myself, then I ain't going to fight you. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. So in the context of what we just read, Bill is trying to break down the agnostic or the atheist and say, you know what? You're going to be handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice, which is true. But I'm taking this to a different place in the study tonight, and I'm talking about your whole life will change if you can not have these things happen in your life. This is the design for living. This is about open-mindedness, and the open-mindedness is the gateway to true actual knowledge, and these are the 3 things that will block you from that. And the more you're in the book and the more you read that, the more the shit kicks in your day-to-day life. Many of us had been so touchy that even the casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. Though some of us resisted, we found it no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was the great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as we were. Faced with alcoholic destruction, you will become as open-minded on spiritual matters as you try to be in other areas of your life. In this respect, alcohol is the great persuader. It will beat you into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this is a tedious process. That's important. Sometimes this is a long, fucking painful process. I see people not surrender to this program for years, man. And they get beaten under the lash of alcoholism for years. Because they won't give in to what the directions are and do what the path is that is thoroughly laid out for us. And then after years of them banging their head against the wall, they finally admit complete defeat. By every form of experimentation and self-deception. They try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. They try the desperate experiment again and again. And until you get a full knowledge of your condition, or you're just willing to change your life, this shit isn't easy. It isn't easy, man. Yeah, my point is you can come around here for years and think the theory of God. You can try, but it's a long, tedious process. And I always tell anybody that's new or anyone that wants this design for living, find somebody that's living that, man, and dig this in really hard into the first 2 or 3 years of your life. And then the rest of your life will just kind of adapt to that. But if you come in here for 6 months or 8 months and dig in a little bit and then go out and try to do this, it doesn't work as well. And it takes a long time, and you probably drink again and you're miserable and fuck. Trying to seek humility as something to be desired will take a long fucking time, and at the end of it, you're probably drunk anyway. So you may as well, dig in and see what we're really doing here. Get through your first set of steps. Remove yourself of the substance, and then keep digging in. And job or no job, wife or no wife, that shit doesn't matter. Nothing is dependent on anything in your life except a relationship with God. Period. That's it. When we get to step 12, we'll really hammer that home. But anyway, so in this respect, alcohol is the great persuader. It finally beats us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this is a long, tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. The reader may ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons. Let us have a look at some of them. The practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of a doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of reread something here because I'm going to point it out in a second. The practical individual today is a stickler for facts and results. Or atheist or agnostic, they want facts or results. Now I'm going to go back down. Everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there is good evidence, but no perfect visual proof. And does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? So your typical agnostic or atheist is always going to be like, well, I need proof, I need proof, I need proof. I need scientific proof. And then it tells me right here, well, doesn't science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof anyway? It is being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world that outward appearances are not inward reality at all. And that's kind of the same with us humans. Outward appearances, what I show you out there in life, is not always inside reality at all. Why? Because I live this idea that you need me to live out there. And why am I saying this? Because we all do it. I'm the version of me, of who the world tells me I am, and then I make the deal and say, yep, that's who I am. And it's just my ego. And it's this idea of who I think I am based on my belief systems, what I think is good for me, what I think is good for you. I am who I am on how much money I make and who I date and all these things. Right? And basically it all boils down to I'm that victim again. I've been tricked by society, by everybody, of a delusion, of a lie, that all these things outside of me can fill me and make me happy. So outward appearances, I can make it all look good to all y'all on Facebook and Twitter and all these other things. My life's great, but inside I'm fucking dying. Right? So it's not always, the same on the inside as we make it look on the outside. And that's why in this study it's about becoming authentically true to who you are. So you don't need to wear 2 masks or 3 masks or 4 masks. You play the role that you're assigned with God. Whatever the role is that you're assigned is the role that God assigns to you. And it's not about wearing masks, because you build the character and you're true to who you are and you're true to who your God is. And so when I'm a father, but I'm playing the role of a father, but God's the employer for me. And when I go to work, I'm the same character person, but now I play the role somewhere else. And as we get more through the steps, this will come to fruition. And this is the kind of the goal when I work with sponsees. I want them to be one person, not many people like society has taught us. And it's not even all of our fault. But we can change it. And then if we keep living like that, then, it becomes a decision based on self. And it's going to be fucking hurtful and nasty. So anyway, let's keep going. So outward appearances are not inward reality at all. To illustrate, the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is an all-powerful guiding creative intelligence. Right there, our perverse streaks come to the surface, and we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. We read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments, thinking we'll believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end of it all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? So I want to touch base on that. It's one of my favorite lines in the big book. Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, what is that? An intelligent agent is basically, in today's terms, it's a data collector. Somebody who gains information. And if you look up intelligent agent on your own, you'll basically see what I'm saying, okay? So instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, people of collecting of data, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, well, that's what I think God wants us for. And that's what it says here. We want to be intelligent agents, use our experience and our wisdom, what we see, what we feel. So I sponsor all these people, I go to all these meetings, and I see all these things. So I'm collecting all this data. And then I kind of filter all this data, and then my buddy, Jesse, I don't know if any of you know him, he's like my best bud. He sponsors the same amount of guys as I do. He does the same shit I do. And then we meet, and we just share data. And it's not like we're going to meet to share data. We just share our experiences over the years, and we see the black and the white. We see what works, we see what doesn't work. And we compare the data, and we come up with, like, holy shit. Let's not do that anymore, and let's do this. These kind of guys, when they do this, they're fucked. Like, there's so many things that we've seen. And it's about collecting data. And also in the rooms, I collect data in the sharing. And it's not to be judgmental. I got a brain and I just use it. And then I use it for what? I use it to be a spearhead of God's ever-advancing creation. What does that mean? It means that I'm a leader for a cause of God, for God's ever-advancing creation. And I think we all can take some responsibility for being leaders. And when we talk about humility in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, it tells me in step 7 in here, it says, let's get away from our aversion to the idea of humility meaning being humble. To gain a vision of humility is avenue to true freedom of the human spirit. And then he describes humility as the desire to seek and do God's will. So it's not about being humble. It's about how can I serve God and how can I serve you. And it's okay for me to want to help you. I can go talk to a newcomer and share. I don't need him to wait for him to come and talk to me. I can share in a meeting from my fucking heart if I see that 300 people are doing the same thing and it's fucking not turning out well. I can share whatever the fuck I want if I have a desire to do God's will and try to be helpful. And I think that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to be leaders. And somebody carried the message to you, and it worked. Somebody carried it to me, and somebody carried it to my sponsor. And I know that, like, the guys that I sponsor, they're now doing, like, little big book studies with other guys. Why? Because they want to be spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation. Some of my sponsees are starting businesses that have nothing to do with anything they've ever done, because they want to be spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation. And I think it's okay if we really want to work for God and you really want to do something good, it's okay. You don't have to just be humble and keep it to yourself. Fuck that. Bill says it. Let's get away from our aversion to the idea of humility meaning being humble. And aversion means intense dislike for. So, I implore anybody to carry the message, man. Carry the message of love. Because that's what the program's about. It's not about not drinking. But that's why we came here. And then Bill's smart because he uses our greatest deficit as our biggest asset. I'm able to help another struggling fucking drunk alcoholic addict and help him get sober. And my detriment becomes my asset. And then I start relating with you and connecting with your heart through the process and start understanding that all that other shit, the cars and the women and all the shit out here, is actually not important as one-on-one or even this. That's why I'm here doing it. Because my heart's in this shit. Because I want to be a spearhead. I'm not doing it for ego. I'm doing it because I hope that, Tony is a better mom. I hope that, Darlene's a better mom, and I'm a better person, and we all become better people, because that ripple effect has large effect, and we have no idea how big effect this is. So I just want you guys to think about that shit, man. Okay, so I'm on page 49, last paragraph. We who have traveled this dubious path beg of you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. We have learned that whatever human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices, when we might have observed that many spiritual-minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness we should have sought ourselves. That's my experience right there. I used to cynically dissect anybody with faith or religion. And I would do that in front of my kids, and I taught my kids that. And now I'm undoing that. And I should have been observed that these people, spiritually minded people, we're demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness that we should have sought ourselves. I should have sought it myself. But why didn't I? Because I was handicapped by obstinacy. I didn't want to see their truth, and I thought I knew what I knew. But what's more important than what I know is what I don't fucking know. That's why I say that. And I was, I was the guy, if you came up to me, talked to me about religion, many of us had been so touchy, even the casual reference of spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. That was me. You came up to me and started talking to me about God or anything like that, fuck, I was just like, oh, just get away from me, man. And that's my stubbornness. It's my old ideas. It's my pride. It's all those things on the top of 48 that keep me in this box that I can't grow. If I'm stuck in this box, I will not grow. I gotta open my mind. And I look at my life getting burnt down and I was beaten into a state of reasonableness as a total gift. I ended up losing my family, my house, my business that I built for 15 years. I paid 10 years on a mortgage, $3,000 a month, lost it in foreclosure. I lost my business that was making $3 million a year. My house was estimated over $1 million. And I fucking had $1 million worth of paid off equipment. I lost all that shit. And I don't look at it as a fucking negative. I don't look back in my life and go, you know what? it's kind of a shame, but in the same breath, I needed to fucking lose that stuff and be beaten into a state of reasonableness so I could fill that hole that I always tried to fill with all those things I was just telling you about. Besides my family, that was one positive thing. I look at those things as a gift today. I needed to lose that stuff so I could find out who I am. Because I was a victim of the delusion. But the delusion never treated me, never filled me up, never made me happy. I spent 20 years looking for happiness outside of myself. And I never could find it. But society is what told me that. Right? But it never worked. And then I came here and I got beaten up. And I did what I was told. And I found who I truly was. Think about this. What would you be like if you truly knew who you were? So for the new people, what would you be like if you truly knew who you were and who you could be? It's an interesting question. It's a double-sworded question. What would you be like if you truly knew who you were, like right now, cleaned house and actually saw the truth about who you actually are? And what would you be like if you truly knew who you were? Way down on the inside, minus all the delusional shit. Bottom of the page, 49. Happiness, usefulness, which we should have sought ourselves. Instead, we looked at the human defects of these people and sometimes of their shortcomings as the basis of wholesale condemnation. We talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. We missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. We never gave the spiritual side of life a fair hearing. So I'm going to talk about something here. So it's a story that I made up. And we talk about, instead we looked at the human defects of these people. Okay? So I'm going to take this out of context. How many times have you looked at the human defects of somebody? And sometimes use their shortcomings, maybe, something that they didn't do so well, as a basis of wholesale condemnation. You paint them with one brush, one stroke, in a negative light because they said something wrong, or they did something you didn't like, or they wore something, or they looked a certain way. How many times have we done that? Right? We talked of intolerance. I'm going to talk of intolerance when you're fucking judging me, then I'm intolerant myself. We talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. Think about that shit when you go out tomorrow. That is us to a T. I'm going to fucking judge you for doing what you're doing, and I'm going to do it quietly over here, but I'm not going to notice. Right? We talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. We missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. Yeah, I'm going to miss the beauty of the forest through the ugliness of some of its trees. Here's the story. So I work downtown. And I got to walk down fucking First Street, southwest. And every day when I first started walking down this road to go to work, I would see these like bum guys in this one little area of the street. And they would hide in this like doorway, this big doorway. And then I remember when I was first going that way, I kind of got startled. The guy rolled out in his wheelchair and fucking I just kind of bolted. And I never went there again. But I would still walk down the street. But I would cross the street and I would walk down the other side of the street. And I would see those guys, but I wouldn't look at them. And I would walk down the street and go to work. And then on the way home, I'd cross the street and walk on the other side of the street. And wouldn't look at them. And I did this for fucking years. And I would see the same, mostly the same one guy. And some of the other guys were not always the same, but the one guy was always the same. He had a wheelchair and he had like 2 missing legs and he looked really fucked up and and I remember thinking, fuck, I don't want to meet those guys. I don't want to fucking talk to those guys. And I would avoid them like the fucking plague. And then years go by and I keep doing this and life's just normal. I go to work, get my money, go home, fucking live the delusion that I'm fucking happy and all this shit. And I wasn't too unhappy, but I wasn't totally happy either, right? Still fucking just kind of grinding it out like everyone else. And then one day I'm late for work. And I'm like, fuck, man. I just got to get to work. Like, I got to get there or I'm in shit. So I decided, I didn't see those guys standing there that day. I didn't see anyone. So I decided, fuck it. I'm going to take the chance and I'm going to go down the sidewalk. So I end up cruising down the sidewalk and, I think the coast is clear and I'm kind of nervous, but I'm going because I got to get to work. And then all of a sudden, right at the last second, boom, this guy rolls out in his wheelchair and scares the shit out of me. And he's like, hey, sir, do you mind if I bother you for a couple dollars? And I'm like, kind of was my worst fear in a way. And I'm like, you know what, bud, sure. So I start digging in my pocket. And then I'm talking to this guy. And I'm like, this guy talks pretty good. It's not like, what's up with this guy? And I start talking to this guy. And he's missing both his legs. And, he's all dirty. Missing some teeth. But he seems like fucking fine, kind of. So I started asking this guy, like, what's the matter? What's going on? Like, how'd you get here? And he's, he ends up telling me a story that he was an engineer and he used to make millions of dollars and he used to help build buildings and give to charities and he had a really beautiful wife who he loved and she ended up getting sick and he had to spend all of their life savings to help her get through the sickness. And then she ended up dying. And then he ended up getting an infection in his legs and he had to have his legs amputated. But he didn't have any family here because they were from overseas. So he ended up losing his legs and becoming homeless. And then now what he does is he collects money for the other homeless guys and he gives his money away to these other homeless guys who hang out around there. And I'm sitting there going, are you fucking kidding me? And this guy ends up being one of the nicest men I ever met. And I missed the beauty of this man by the ugliness of some of the shortcomings that I thought he had. And how many times have we fucking judged somebody and then got to know them and go, fuck, that guy was nothing like I thought he was. Like, what right do we have to judge anybody about anything? We don't. But we do have the right to reach our hand out and be helpful and try to help somebody up. And that's the great thing about this program. We reach back and lift people up. I talked to Anna today. Me and Anna had a good chat today on the phone for about 20 minutes. We helped each other, lift each other up. Because that's what we do around here. And we don't balk at that shit because that's the gift. That's the real gift. What's the purpose of life? The purpose of life isn't me fucking going to acquire shit. It's about me lending my hand out and trying to help somebody. And we'll get to some more of that stuff. I just like to share that story. And that story's not even true. But it is true. Because how many times have we done that? I know I have. But I made up that story. And it works good in my sponsorship. Anyway. So in our personal stories, you will find a wide variation in the way each teller approaches and conceives of the power which is greater than himself. Whether we agree with a particular approach or conception seems to make little difference. Experience has taught us that these are matters about which, for our purpose, we need not be worried. They are questions for each individual to settle for himself. So we got 42 stories in the back of the book. You think they're about getting you sober? No, they're not. It tells me right here. Each teller approaches and conceives of a power which is greater than themselves. It's about how did this person get in touch with the God? Because that is the deal of what this book is about. Its main object will enable you to find a power that will solve your problem. It's not about coming here and getting sober. It's about relationship with God. And it's kind of like the step 3 prayer. Well, I come here wanting happiness. Well, none of this step work is for your happiness. It's not for my happiness. What is it for? God, relieve me of the bondage of self so I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, which are my defects of character, so that victory over them, this fight over those things, because they're hard to relinquish, may bear witness to those I will help of thy power, thy love, thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Step 3 prayers. What's step 7 prayer? My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, the good and the bad. I now ask that you remove every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go from here to work for you. Do your bidding. Amen. Truth. This ain't about fucking happiness. It's about service. It's about stripping yourself down, finding out who you actually are, and finding out who you really are and being of service to God and your fellows. What's the byproduct of doing that? Happiness. What's the byproduct of doing that? Contentment, serenity, true freedom of the human spirit. It's all in step 7. And stick around for step 6 and 7. I'm going to knock your fucking socks off, because that is the program in a nutshell. And step 3, next week's going to kick ass too. Like this whole rest of the study, starting today, this study is going to rock. My least favorite steps to deliver is step 1. Step 2 to 12, man, fucking lights me the fuck up. One proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. What men and women? The ones in the 42 stories in the back. And anyone who's 12-step running a really good program, this will also apply to you. Every one of them has gained access to and believes in a power greater than themselves. This power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. As a celebrated American statesman put it, let's look at the record. Here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. Worldly means non-spiritual. Non-spiritual. That they flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude towards that power. What's the attitude? Turning to the power and giving it to God. To do certain simple things, meaning there's some action, there has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. Look at that. Revolutionary change. And you don't really know what that might be. But I'll tell you, it's probably fucking great. But you don't know. But we think we know. But what's more important than what you think you fucking know is what you don't know. And that revolutionary change in your outlook, fucking unbelievable. In their way of living and thinking. In the face of collapse and despair, in the face of total failure of their human resources. So now we're talking about, I come in here, in the face of collapse and despair. In the face of total failure of my human resources. I'm beaten to a pulp. They found that a new power, peace and happiness and sense the direction flowed into them. When did this happen? Well, it happened soon after they wholeheartedly, conceding from your innermost self, wholeheartedly, not from the brain, from the fucking soul, met a few simple requirements. So when I talked to you about the prayer earlier, that we need to try to get down and feel that prayer, that's what I'm talking about, wholeheartedly. Met a few simple requirements, some directions in this program, some actions. Once and baffled by the seeming futility of existence. That's me. I was once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence. Now they show the underlying reasons why they were making a heavy going of life. We're talking about the steps here. I get to see the reasons, the underlying reasons why I actually make a heavy going at life. It's that self thing. Leaving aside the drink question. Love it. Leaving aside the fucking drink question. Because it's not even the fucking issue. The drink is not the issue. But if you're new, it is. But really, it's not. And the book will take you to the fucking place of removal of substance. And it'll take you to the place what we're talking about today if you're new. But leaving aside the drink question, because it's not even the issue, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. I get to tell you all of that in step 4 and 5. That's where it gets uncovered. They show that change came over them. When many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God today is the most important fact of their lives, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith. So here are thousands of men and women, non-spiritual indeed. And now we're talking millions across the globe. And if these guys say the consciousness of the presence of God today is the most important fact of their life. People that give no shit about God come in here and now God's the most important fact of their life. That's a powerful reason why one should maybe think about staying open-minded and trying this. Because if you're anything like me and you balked at God when you got here, fuck, man. God's the bomb now. I'm convinced that my life run by me is not successful. I try not to run it at all. And it takes time. It takes understanding selfish self-centeredness that we believe is the root of our troubles. And that's what I love to do. I love to expose that shit and show it to you so that you can grow in this program and be of service. This world of ours has made more material progress in the last century than all of the millenniums which went before. Almost everyone knows the reason. Students of ancient history tell us that intellect of those men in those days were equal to the best of today. Yet in ancient times, material progress was painfully slow. The spirit of modern scientific inquiry, research, and invention was almost unknown. In the realm of the material, men's minds were fettered by superstition and tradition and all sorts of fixed ideas. Fucking love that. So in the realm of the material, men's minds were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. Some of the contemporaries of Columbus thought a round earth preposterous. Others came near putting Galileo to death for his astronomical heresies. These things proved to be true. Galileo proved that everything that he was fucking presenting was true, but they're going to kill the guy. Because they're superstitions and fettered with all these old ideas, and they fucking can't believe that this guy has the audacity to bring these things forth. But then it ends up being true. Same with Columbus, right? Who believes the earth is round? Well, this guy does. Everyone else is like, you're fucking crazy. Probably we're going to kill him too. So what I want to point out is, once the proof was there, they changed their mind, right? This whole chapter is about changing your mind. And it's all a mindset. And if you are stuck and fettered in these ideas, and you're obstinate, you stay in this box. We had asked ourselves this: are not some of us just as biased and unreasonable about the realm of the spirit as were the ancients were about the realm of the material? Even in present century, American newspapers were afraid to print the account of the Wright brothers' first successful flight at Kitty Hawk. The fucking newspaper was so scared to put the story into the newspaper because they didn't believe that people would believe it, even though it actually happened. They were scared to put it in the newspaper. Did not Professor E. Langley's flying machine go to the bottom of the Potomac River? Was it not true that the best mathematical minds proved that man could never fly? Had not people said God reserved this privilege to the birds? Only 30 years later, the conquest of air was almost an old story and airplane travel was in full swing. But in most fields of our generation had witnessed a complete liberation of our thinking. Show any longshoreman a Sunday supplement describing our proposal to explore the moon by means of a rocket, and he will say, I bet they do it, maybe not so long either. Is not our age characterized by the ease which we discard old ideas for new, by the complete readiness which we throw out the theory or the gadget that does not work for something new that does? So I have this new phone, and it does whatever they tell me it does, and I believe it. Fuck. And then they give me a new phone next week, and it scratches my back and walks my dog and drives my car, and I can take this one and throw it in the garbage, and I'm just going to believe that this new phone does all this other shit. Why? Because our age is characterized by the ease which we can discard old ideas for new. Gadgets that don't work for new ones that do. But you ask me to believe in God, and I'm like, whoa. Fuck, this thing that's going to save my life, I'm not really sure I really want that. Whoa. Now you're fucking going a little bit fucking extreme here. And it's all in my fucking head. And that's why it's so easy to smash a agnostic or atheist perspective on their thing, as you go through here, because it's all over through here, and there's more. So we had to ask ourselves, okay, this is one of my best things. Okay, these are what Jesse, my buddy, and I call the Step Zero promises. These promises are guaranteed. There's 8 of them, okay, that you came in here with. There might be one that you didn't, but I would guarantee you probably had 7, if not 8 of them. And in my opinion, and from my experience, if you don't work a full program, you will fucking have these promises in sobriety. And then it's fucking, you don't have a solution of drinking and drugging if you're living in these promises. The solution is at the bottom of it. And I'm going to change what it actually says in the book to my own words, because I don't really like the last sentence of the book. Anyway, here we go. We had to ask ourselves, why shouldn't we apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view? Step 0 promise number 1. We were having trouble with personal relationships. Fuck yeah. We all come in here having trouble with personal relationships. We can't control our emotional natures. No, can't control my anger, can't control my crying, can't control this, can't control that. It controls me and it happens on a whim. We were a prey to misery and depression. I like that one. Prey to misery and depression. You know how many people I've heard say thought I had depression, all I had was untreated alcoholism? But you know what prey to misery and depression will do? You know, the word prey in the dictionary means an animal that hunts and stalks another to kill and eat. Misery and depression cause people to kill themselves. And it happens all the time. But God can treat that shit. So we were prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. That is the one thing that some people will have. And they're able to make a living. And that will keep them out of the rooms for fucking years. They can have all 7 of these other ones. But if they're able to make a living, their pride says, I'm not an alcoholic. And that one there kept me out of the rooms forever until I burnt my life right to the ground. I was beaten into a state of reasonableness. But I was still able to make money until I was not able to make money anymore. I wasn't coming here. Not on purpose. I just couldn't do it. So we had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution in these bedevilments more important than fucking anything? Yeah. I want a solution to this more important than I want anything. Okay. Well, when we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance on a spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. God solves these problems. When we talk about step 1, powerless over alcohol and their lives are unmanageable, think about that for a second. Powerless is one thing. Well, what's unmanageability? This is your unmanageability for what step 1 is. And think about when you came in here. This is what you are living. And you need to blot this shit out. This is the restless, irritable, and discontentment. Unless I can again experience the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking the first few drinks. And I need to blot this shit out because it's intolerable. And if you're working a program and it's not a solid program, then you will blot out these things with sex, with lust, with shopping, with fucking anger, with all sorts of things. You're going to try to blot out these things with other things. That's why it's so important for us to smash the delusion, the second delusion in the big book. And if I smash the second delusion, honestly, like full on, I don't even want to fucking drink. It's in the big book, tells me that. I will not want to drink if I'm able to turn my will and my life fully over to the care of God. It says it at the end of this chapter. I couldn't drink even if I would. Step 10 tells me we have ceased fighting anyone or anything, even alcohol. Why? Because alcohol is not the problem. This is. I fight myself. So, step 0 promises. You can have them in recovery. And if you keep living them in recovery, chances are you're going to be miserable. And if you stay too miserable too long, you need relief. And the drink fucking looks like a good idea. So, I always work with somebody, when they first come in, I say, I want you to say check mark after I read each one. And they usually go check mark, check mark, check mark 8 times. And then after like 8 months or a year, we reread them and there's no check marks. But once they stop having God in their life, then the check marks come back. This is a good barometer for your recovery. Every now and then go through this thing and go, you know, how many check marks do I got going on here? Because if you have too many, God's not running your life enough. And if you got way too many check marks, you better get on the beam with something in your recovery. So when we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea does. The Wright brothers' almost childish faith that they could build a machine that would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment. Without that, nothing could have happened. We agnostics and atheists were sticking to the idea that self-sufficiency would solve our problems, when others showed us that God's sufficiency worked with them. We began to feel like those who had insisted that the Wrights could never fly. Logic is great stuff. Where does logic come from? Chad's pointing to his brain. Logic comes from the brain. Okay? It's just important to know. We like it. We still like it. It is not by chance that we were given power to reason, to examine the evidence of our 5 senses, and to draw conclusions. That is one of man's magnificent attributes. We agnostically inclined would not feel satisfied with the proposal, which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. Hence we are at pains to tell why we think our present faith is reasonable, why we think it more sane and logical to believe than to not believe, why we say our former thinking was soft and mushy when we threw up our hands in doubt and said we don't know. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could no longer postpone or evade, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. What is our choice to be? He either is or he isn't. So think about when you got crushed. You've been trying to postpone and evade this alcohol drug addiction thing in every shape and form, and you finally get backed into the corner. So for me, I was backed into the corner. I had lost every hiding spot. I couldn't hide behind money anymore. I couldn't hide behind anything. I'm fucking crushed by self-imposed crisis. I could no longer postpone or evade. I had to fearlessly face the proposition that either this God thing was everything or he's nothing. And for me, I came in here not wanting God. And I was like self-will dude, build businesses on self-reliance. And even walking through the door and admitting that was humiliating. Which is humility in the most humiliating form. And humbling and getting to the step 2 and going, you know what, I gotta fucking believe in this God thing that I don't even want. It's pretty fucking humiliating in its own right. But I didn't really have a choice because I could examine the evidence of my senses and go, look at your life using your brain and all the shit that you've lost and all the harm that you've caused. Reasonable approach and interpretation. 1 + 1 = 2. You drink and do drugs. Your life's fucked. Here you are. And that's what I did. So I'm crushed. And I get here. And I have to kind of turn it over with drugs and alcohol. I didn't know about turning the rest of my life over. But at that point when I was new, I didn't give a fuck. I didn't know what I wanted. I just didn't have another choice. I actually didn't have another choice, so I just said, fuck, okay, God is everything, whatever. Think about your own recovery as we read this. I arrived at this point. At what point? You know, a point where you got to look at God as the solution, which you've never probably looked at before. We are squarely confronted with the question of faith. Yeah, I'm confronted with it. And think about the word confronted. When someone confronts you, I'm confronted with the question of faith. Fuck, I don't want people to confront me. I don't want fucking faith confronting me, but I don't have a choice, right? We couldn't duck the issue anymore. I've been trying to duck this issue my whole life. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason towards this desired shore of faith. So what's the bridge of reason? Well, I can see my life logically using the evidence of my senses. and I know that it's not turning out very well. So I'm using my reason, my ability to add things up and come to conclusions. And I start walking all far over this bridge of reason towards this desired shore of faith. I come to AA. And I know I need help. And I don't know if I desire this shore of faith, but I know I don't really have an option. So that's what we're talking about. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason towards this desired shore of faith. The outlines and the promise of the new land had brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. Think about your first few meetings. The luster to tired eyes. The courage to your flagging spirits. The messages that you heard. A little bit of hope when you think you're like on the verge of death. You get a little bit of hope. Friendly hands stretched out in welcome. That's a big one. The altruistic movement. The people putting their hands out. Welcome. And how can you welcome me when I don't even fucking want to look you in the eye? We were grateful that reason had brought us this far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we had been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we didn't like to lose our support. To turn this over at whatever stage is not an easy ideal. Because self does do some positive things, and we've all done some positive things on self, and we don't like to lose our support. I don't want to give it all up to something I don't know. Perhaps we had been leaning too heavily on self for that last mile, and we didn't like to lose our support. That was natural, but let us think a little more closely. Without knowing it, had we not brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? For did we not believe in our own reasoning? Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yet we had been faithful, abjectly faithful to the God of reason. So in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. Faith in myself. We found too that we had been worshippers. What a state of mental gooseflesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, sediment, things, money, and ourselves? What are those things? What are we talking about? Had we not variously worshipped people, sediment? Think about the people we've worshipped in our lives. The sports athletes, the rich people on TV, the person at the board table that fucking has it going on. Who have you worshipped? What kind of people did I worship? I worship people that were fucking making a lot of money. I worship people that drove really nice brand new trucks, that were building nice companies. I worship sports stars. I worshipped, fucking movie stars. I worshipped all sorts of people. I worshipped women, I thought women were like to be worshipped. Sediment. What does that mean? Worshipping sediment, an idea. What kind of sediments do I worship? Well, I worship, that men rock and they have this role and women have this role. And I'm not going to break from this idea that I hold true. I worship that if you work hard, you fucking will have success and be happy. I worship what other ideas? Fuck, there's hundreds of ideas we can worship. We talk about judgments. We're only going to look at judgments that we think are bad for us. But there's a whole bunch of judgments in our lives that we think are good for us, but they block us too. So who would we not variously worship? People, sediment, all these ideas. And these are good things for you guys to think about. What people have you worshipped? What ideas do you worship? What belief systems do you worship? Things. What things do you worship? Money. Ourselves. Pomp. Ourselves. I used to worship myself to a degree. Look how good I was. Look how much money I could make. Look what I drive. Look this, look that. Even my wife would be like, well, Bill, no one knows how awesome you are more than you. Because these are the things that originate from our brain. Because these are the things we see with our five senses. That society taught us. That they show us on TV. That they show us every day. And it's not always my fault that I have these beliefs. But now I can expose these things. And we're talking about the delusion, the second delusion, that I can wrest happiness and satisfaction of this world if I only manage well, have all these things. That's what we're talking about. Everything comes from my mind, logic. It's great stuff. Okay? And then with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? Think about that. When you look at the sunset, the sea, or a flower, or you watch your little kid playing, or you see a mother and their child like interacting, or a father and their son playing, or you see a little set of ducklings run across the road, where does that shit come from? It doesn't come from the head, man. It comes from the heart. It comes from down here. Who of us had not loved something or somebody? How much did these feelings, these loves, these worship have to do with pure reason? Fucking little or nothing. Because it doesn't come from the head. It comes from the heart. It comes from the soul. Little or nothing, we saw at last. Were not these things the tissue of which our lives were constructed? Are not these things, these ideas, these looking at the enchanted by a starlit night, watching my child play, having an authentic relationship with my wife or my friend, helping somebody else, are not these things the fabric, the tissue of our existence or lives were constructed out of? Yeah, man. That is what it is about. The next line. Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? Yeah. That determines the actual course of our existence. When you get to the end of your life and you're laying on the fucking bed and buddy asks you, what do you wish you did more of? I wish I bought some more shit. I wish I fucked over more people and bulldozed them down so I could make more money. I wish I had 5 more cars. Or is it, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids. I wish I wouldn't have worked so hard. I wish I wouldn't have spent all that money on all this shit. I wish I would have taken time off of work so I could spend it with my kids while they were growing up. I wish I would have given my wife more time so she didn't divorce me. Those are the kind of things that you hear. But we confuse it all. We get distracted by this. But this is it right here. It's down here. And when you hear people sharing in meetings, you know when it's ego. And the ego turns you off when somebody shares in a meeting. But when somebody is sharing from their heart, it radiates as a vibration and it sucks you in when people are sharing from the heart. Why? Because that's what it is about. It's not about this fucking thing up here. And I had to learn this the hard way because I spent my whole life living from here. And I've spent the last 5 years learning how to live from here. And the first 2 of it, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. But I figured it out at about year 2. And I've just grown with it since. Because it's the gold. It's the gold, man. So did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? It was impossible to say we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, we'd been living by faith and little else. Imagine life without faith, where nothing left but pure reason. Yeah, think about it. Pure reason. It wouldn't be life. But we believed in life. Of course we did. We could not prove life in the sense you can prove a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, yet there it was. Could we still say the whole thing was nothing but a mass of electrons created out of nothing, meaning nothing, whirling onto a destiny of nothingness? Of course we couldn't. The electrons seemed more intelligent than that. At least said so the chemist. Hence we saw that reason is not everything. Neither is reason, as most of us use it, entirely dependable, though it emanate from our best minds. What about people who prove that man could never fly? Yet we have been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world. People who rose above their problems. They said God made these things possible. I love that. A spiritual liberation from this world, from the material world. Because there's two worlds here. There's the world of the spirit and there's the world of the material. We're all entrenched in the world of the material. This program will allow you to fucking launch into the world of the spirit, the fourth dimension, through altruism, through genuine humility, through the work in this program, through a willingness to want to seek humility as something to be desired, not something you must have just to stay sober. They said God made these things possible and we only smiled. We had seen spiritual release but like to tell ourselves it wasn't true. Actually, we'd been fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, pomp, and worship of other things, but in some form or another it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was part of our makeup. Boom. Faith in some kind of God is part of our makeup. Why? How do I know that? Because did these feelings, after all, not determine the course of our existence? Because it's part of me. It's built right into me. It's built into me. Just as much as feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly. But he is there. We found the great reality deep down within us. It was in the last analysis. It is only there that he may be found. It is so within us. Okay, so we get back to the top of this paragraph. Okay, so actually we were fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured. So it's telling me it's obscured. It's not fully visible. By calamity, life's happenings, pomp, self, worship of other things. We just talked about, did we not variously worship all these other things? What is the fundamental idea within every man, woman, and child? The fundamental idea of God. Love. The heart. So the fundamental idea of God is within every man, woman, and child. It's part of our makeup. And did these feelings, after all, not determine the course of our existence? The fundamental idea is God. It is within you. Okay? But it's obscured. It's blocked off by calamity, pomp, worship of other things. Yeah, dude. It's not even like, it's not the version of love that we think in this world of the material. It's this love, this heart, this thing. It's obscured. Most of us don't even feel what the fuck I'm talking about. Because it's obscured by calamity, pomp, and worship of other things. But sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he is there. It is there. It's part of our makeup. He is as much of a fact as we were. Because I'm an ego. I think I know who I am. But really, what really true me is that. That is true me. And I've never been able to listen to that in my fucking life. Why? Because I've been already indoctrinated with all society's ideas and belief systems. Sometimes you have like a feeling, but then it's fleeting and soon lost, and then you go back to your mind and go, well, I got to figure this out with my mind. It's because we have a God guidance system. It's within us. It's called God consciousness, and it resides within every man, woman, and child on earth. But it's obscured. It's blocked off. And once we start listening to that, because that is truly who you are. That is truly who you are. Because the me who I sit here today and tell you who I am, it's a deal between who you tell me I am and who I think I am and what mask I need to wear. But if you do enough work in this program, you don't ever need to wear a mask again. And we talk about boundaries in this program, setting boundaries. Oh, I got to set boundaries because all these things in my life. You will never need to set a fucking boundary in your life. Why? Because the thing that sets every boundary in your life is that voice that's been so quiet your whole life that it's never had a chance to really fucking speak. Because this thing is the master, but this thing should be the servant. And once you start clearing this channel through the inventory, through helping others, and through meditation, you start being able to listen to this thing, okay? This thing will never let you down, ever. It will set every boundary in your life, because your instincts and your gut feeling is your God consciousness. And when you live from the heart and you live from that thing, you will never fucking go wrong. Never. And it's called the mark. It's right into me. It's my aiming system. And I call it the GPS, God's pointer system. And when I listen to this thing, it tells me what's right and what's wrong for me. And what's right and what's wrong for me as a human being. I'm fucking good, and I never have to justify what's right. Because I know, because I'm listening to infinite intelligence within myself. And then, to further this, the word sin means missing the mark. So when I miss the mark, when I'm not listening to true self of what I actually believe to be right and wrong, and I go and I'm not listening to my aiming system, I'm missing the mark. I'm going to act in sin. And if I keep missing the fucking mark, I need to fucking drink. I need to blot it out. Because my inner God consciousness that tells me what's right and wrong, if I keep doing what's wrong, it creates so much inner disturbance within me because I'm not listening to true self, my God consciousness, and I need to blot that out. What I want to emphasize is it's not all our fault. We have been indoctrinated in a society that teaches us that all this shit from outside of you fills that, but it doesn't fill that. And once you start listening to that thing, and it takes time, okay? I'm going to say I listen to it like fucking 90. I listen to that voice. I do not make decisions on my own. I discern them with my pillars. Any decision, buying a car, moving, fucking dating, whatever. Because I don't want to make decisions based on self. And the more that I rely on my pillars, especially in the first few years, and I sharpen this tool gets nice and sharp. And then I start trusting it. But we've never been able to trust it because we've never been able to really use it. We get the odd feeling every now and then, and you're like, fuck, I had a feeling I shouldn't have done that. But we never fucking go with the feeling because this always fucking gets in the way. And that's this, man. You listen to the mark. Your God pointer system, God will never guide you wrong. But when you're new to this, heavily rely on your God-centered 12-step pillars and keep going through the pain of whatever is presented in front of you. Because you got to clear this channel. And God knows where you're broken and He knows where I'm broken. And through my experience of going through this, He keeps putting the same challenge in my life so that I learn how to get through it. So that I can develop compassion for myself. And I can start listening to myself and I don't fight myself. And then I can develop compassion for you. Every man, woman, and child. It's part of your makeup. It's called love. And I don't mean the love that you see in the material world. I'm talking about development of unconditional love for yourself and for your fellow human being. And as you develop this untapped inner resource and you start listening to it, it will guide your life in a way better area than you will fucking ever imagine. That's kind of what we're doing. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but He is there. If we can only clear the ground a bit. If our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself, then if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fucking fail. With this attitude to do these things, think honestly, search diligently within yourself. With this attitude of God, you cannot fail. Okay? The consciousness, that little smidgen, that little mustard seed of belief. The consciousness of the belief is sure to come to you. There's a lot in that paragraph. So I have an untapped inner resource that's blocked by all this shit. Okay? We're from Alberta. When a drilling rig goes to drill a well in Alberta, they fucking bring in the dozers and they clear the ground and they fucking get down to the mineral soil and they set up a drilling rig. Everyone here knows what a drilling rig looks like because we're from Alberta. So they set up this rig. And then on this rig, they start fucking drilling. They got a big, huge diamond bit. The diamonds are the fucking all around the bit, because diamonds cut through anything. And we fucking start drilling through some of the hardest rock and shale and shit. And these guys that pay the money to build these drills and drill, they don't stop. What are they going for? They're going for the untapped inner resource of oil or natural gas or whatever it is. Because that's fucking gold to them. And they go for it. And they drill. And some of these wells take a year, 2 years to drill. And they cut through anything. They break stems. They lose bits. They do anything to get that stuff. And then what happens when they've cut through all of this shit? They hit the pay dirt. They pull out the drill stem and you got all this fucking oil and natural gas. The untapped inner resource. That's what we do with steps 4 and 5 and 6. We put the drilling rig on our body. And we start drilling through resentment. We start drilling through fear, contentment, all my old ideas. And we start cutting through years of piled up shit that society's taught us and that our brains has fucking solidified. And we cut through. And we clear the channel. And what happens? We get to that untapped inner resource. That inner consciousness. And then we pull out the drill stem. We fucking feel God, the flow of God into our life. And then we need to keep the channel clear. And we need to keep doing some work so that we can level the fuck up and get into this thing that they call the fourth dimension. And when you get to the fourth dimension, man, life's pretty fucking good. Pretty fucking good. It's pretty amazing. And with this attitude, you cannot fail. It's a promise. With this attitude of doing this hard work, you won't fail. Boom. You'll join us on the broad highway. In this book, you will read the experience. So now we're going to kind of run her down to the end here. In this book, you will read the experience. Bill W. Okay, this is when Bill W. was at the town's hospital. So some of you that don't know this story. So Ebby had come to Bill's house earlier, and Bill saw Ebby and he's like, holy shit, this guy's a miracle. He's fucking sober. Holy shit. And Bill kind of started to wake up a little bit. But nothing really happened then. Okay? But then Ebby leaves. Bill's at home. Bill's worried about fucking drinking again, because that's what Bill does. And he told his wife while she was at work, they made a deal. Okay, if I end up feeling like drinking, I'm going to go check myself into the hospital, the town's hospital where Dr. Silkworth is. So this story starts there. And while he was at the town's hospital, Ebby got a call. And so Ebby came and they had a little chat that night. Okay? And then Ebby leaves and then Bill's left and he has this happen. Okay? So in this book you'll read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist, Bill W. His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school, where he had become rebellious at what he thought an overdose of religious education. For years, thereafter, he was dogged by trouble, frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Post-war disillusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental, physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction. Sounds like Step 0 promises to me. And it brought him to the point of self-destruction. Sounds like he wants to kill himself. One night, when he was confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic, Ebby, who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, if there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me. But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question. Is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came and crowded out all else. Who are you to say there's no God? This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by the conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with certainty and majesty of the great tide at flood. The barriers, these judgments, these ideas that he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He stepped from bridge to shore. So Bill had the big, huge, profound spiritual awakening. He turned over in his will and his life in one big moment. Most of us grow into it more slowly. Okay? He stepped from bridge to shore. So we will work our program and continually try to step from bridge to shore. And continue to turn more over and more over. But Bill did it all at once. For the first time, he lived in constant companionship with his Creator. Thus, our friend's cornerstone was fixed in place. There's the cornerstone. That little belief that he had, fixed in place. And a wonderfully effective spiritual structure was built off of a smidgen of a belief. No later vicissitude. Vicissitude means life's happenings, negative happenings. No later vicissitude has shaken it. His alcoholic problem was taken the fuck away. Why? Because he turned over his whole life. And as we learn how to turn over our whole life, our alcohol problem will be taken away. That very night, years ago, it disappeared. Save for a few brief moments of temptation. Except for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never even returned. At such times, a great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly, Bill W. could not drink even if he would, even if he wanted to. He couldn't fucking drink, even if he wanted to. That is the promise of turning your will and your life over. That is the promise of smashing the second illusion. And it talks about it in step 10. You don't even drink. You don't want to drink. And if you do get it, you fucking recoil as from a hot flame. Because there's so much God in your life, you don't fucking need ease and comfort from anything else. God has restored him to his sanity. What is that but a miracle of healing? Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. He humbly, this is step 7 stuff here out of the original manuscript. Why am I going to point this out? Because step 7 is actual surrender to this program. It's not step 3. Step 7 is surrender. And this is what it says right here, and it tells you, I'm telling you the truth. Humbly on our knees, offered himself to his Maker. Holding nothing back, it says in the original manuscript. Humbly offered himself to his Maker. God, I'm yours. Meaning full surrender, step 7. Then he knew. Even so, God has restored us all to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Bill had the sudden one. Some of us grow into it more slowly. It doesn't have to take slowly, though. It can happen quicker. It doesn't have to fucking take 20 years. It takes commitment to follow directions. It takes commitment to fucking grow in altruism. It takes commitment to really want to change your life and believe what this book is saying is true and believe what I'm telling you is true. I work with sponsees that they just believe that I'm telling them the truth. And then they get to whatever level they're getting to, and then they're like, dude, you weren't fucking kidding. And I go, I know, bro. This ain't a fucking joke. This fourth dimension shit ain't a joke. And of course I fall off the beam at times. But fucking, I spent my whole life making millions of dollars. Dude, I don't give a fuck about that anymore. If you can guarantee me that I'm fucking happy and content with my life every day for the rest of my life, putting my head on the pillow, knowing everything's taken care of, and I feel the way I do, I don't give a fuck if you give me $1 million or I have 10. I don't care about anything. Because it ain't about that. But my logical mind will fight that all fucking day long. Like, it's so fucked. This mind will fight what I know is to be true in here. So even though God has restored us all to our right minds, to this man the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into more slowly. But he has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. Meaning, I gotta go. I gotta find God. I gotta do the work. And in my experience, sometimes I do 90% of the work and he does 10. Sometimes he does 90% and I do 10. And honestly, when we get to step 3 next week, It says, when I sincerely take the position that he is my employer, when I sincerely take the position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. Having a new employer, being all powerful, he provides me with what I need if I stay close to him and I perform his work well. So he's guaranteeing me to give me what I need. He pays me because I work for him. So my pay is he pays me with what I need. And then my work is I perform his work well and I stay close to him. And my experience in 5 years of this program is those things are exactly true. But my material mind doesn't want me to really believe that sometimes. I think all this other shit makes me happy, and I better do this, and I better do that. No, man. I better help God's kids, because that's where the gifts are. That's where the gifts are. And the more God's kids that I help, the more is funny how the outside world starts working towards me. You know, I don't need to go out there and take all this shit and bring it in anymore. As I work with God's kids and for God's kids, the world starts working around me and what I want. And it brings me stuff. I've always wanted to have all these things, and they start coming. Like, it's so fucked up. And there's a line in the book, and I'll say it again before I shut her down today. Common sense thus becomes uncommon sense. The way that I thought life worked is actually the opposite. I don't need to go take and grab anything anymore. I don't need to be loved. I need to give everything and be loving. Right? That's the deal now, man. It's not always easy, fuck. But at the end of the day, no one's a saint. It's just about doing this to the best of your ability. But don't bullshit yourself about the best of your ability, because we can easily rationalize what's the best of my ability. I mean the best of your ability, for real. Not lying to yourself and telling you that's the best you can do when you know it really isn't. Because if you listen to that voice that says no, it really isn't, then you're listening to the God consciousness I'm talking about. And if you push that voice away, then you push it away. I really, really want to thank you all for coming here and supporting me and supporting each other